Welcome to another edition of the Willy Bragg Show. I'm your host, Willy Bragg, and we're going to talk about AOC today because, she's sort of been making kind of an impression on people, and there's speculation that she's going to do a 2028 run, and I have some deep-rooted issues with an AOC 2028 run. And I want to tell you, if you don't know this about me, I will tell you this, but I suspect most people know this about me who knows me. And greetings to everyone on the chat line, by the way. What y'all know about me is probably like many people here in the audience and people in the similar field when it comes to independent media, that many of us were at one time supporters of AOC in 2018 when she bursted into the national scene. And I remember this like it was yesterday. And it's hard to believe it's been 7 years, but I first heard of her around this time in 2018. I started hearing the name Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Somebody who's a democratic socialist, self-avowed democratic socialist, challenging a Democrat that's really establishment. What was his name? Joe Crowley. And so I didn't know who Joe Crowley was. Didn't care then. Still don't care. But the thing is that she came into prominence. He didn't do hardly anything to campaign in the primary because she seemed at that time like a fringe figure. And so he was like, who is she? And I think that she spent $300,000 that she had to raise for the primary, and in doing so, she defeated somebody with a $30 million war chest, and then she was considered a polarizing figure, both to Republicans and the Democratic Party establishment at first. So she did things like doing the sit-ins around Nancy Pelosi's office, which I thought was base and wonderful. I mean, she was pissing off the Joe Liebermans. He was still alive, but no longer a senator. The Joe Liebermans of the Democratic Party, the Hillary Clintons of the Democratic Party, the Joe Manchins of the Democratic Party, the Kirsten Sinemas of the Democratic Party, the Chuck Schumers of the Democratic Party. All the people that I find absolutely disgusting in the Democratic Party, the corporatists, the what I call Republican light. She was pissing off those people at first. And I would say, and I never held it against her in 2020 with her lesser evil vote against Biden. I didn't do it, and I suspect many of us didn't do that. I voted for Howie Hawkins in 2020. So here's the thing. And she did a campaign surrogacy in 2020 for Bernie Sanders. So I was like, okay, I thought she was largely based. Where I started to have problems with her was in late 2020, just after the election, and the first week of January. Between then, from November to the first week of January, I started to get irritated with her, and you know why? And I suspect many of us were on the same page back then. She would not go with forced to vote against Nancy Pelosi. She would not go and hold Nancy Pelosi's seat hostage the way it needed to be held hostage, because the Democrats are as bad as the Republicans in a lot of ways when it comes to things like Medicare for all. I tell a lot of people who think, well, Democrats, they just want to socialize the medical system. No, maybe some Democrats might want Medicare for all. I still think that AOC wants Medicare for all. I just don't think that she has the wherewithal to do the challenging. Same with the other members of the squad and those who are adjacent to the squad. And they're not members of the squad, but they sort of float around their orbit, like Rokana and people like that. Maybe even, what's her name? Pramila Jayapal, people that they kind of orbit around the squad, but they're not exactly, they're not a member of the squad, but they're sort of orbit around the squad, but flirts with the mainstream of the Democratic Party at the same time. That little balancing act. And I'm not necessarily holding that against them for doing that, but what I am holding against every one of them is the fact that they were not willing to, when push comes to shove, to make a reasonable demand to have a House floor vote on Medicare for all. Hold Nancy Pelosi's seat hostage. Make her sweat. Agonize her. Make her suffer the mental anguish of these crazy leftists to making these demands. That's all they had to do. And they were like, no, we'll just go and not do anything. And then little by little, you notice that Medicare for all got dropped. And you even had idiot Biden himself, who campaigned on the public option, not even talking about the public option. So everything just went down the hill. And from there, that was my first problem with AOC. And then a lot of problems I started to have with AOC. She'll make an argument against certain bills in Congress, then she'll turn around and vote for it. And that's been her path. And then in 2022, when she and the squad and a lot of lefty Democrats who are usually pacifist adjacent on foreign policy started to back the Ukrainian government. I mean, we can have a debate about Russia one way or the other, but without a doubt, the Ukraine is an authoritarian government that's in a lot of ways further right than the government of Russia under Vladimir Putin. So, and that's what it comes down to. I mean, to the point that there are actual Nazis in the Ukrainian government, in the Ukrainian military, where Stefan Bandera is an actual celebrated figure, a Nazi collaborator, that sort of thing. And the squad ended up voting to fund, to arm Ukraine. I had that problem with the squad. I had that problem with those adjacent to the squad. I had that problem with Bernie Sanders. It was like, what's happened to the left? Where the left, where people on the right were reasonable on the Ukraine. I'm not talking about people who want to go and give a rim job to Vladimir Putin, but those who are basically America first, in the sense that they want the U.S. to stay out of the affairs of other countries around the world. But even on that side, they weren't fully putting their money where their mouth is, because while they were correct on voting no on Ukraine funding, they were actually okay with funding Taiwan, and with a lot of rhetoric that was reminiscent of the Cold War against China. And this is not a defense nor a denunciation of the Chinese government. I'm just saying this is what's happened. So you saw the neo-conification of the squad of what was supposed to be the left movement in the United States. Not that they're neocon, but they started to adapt some things from the neocons that we hated these people from the Bush-Cheney era for. And a little side note, a lot of the neocons did go to the Democrats as a result of Trump. I would say they were the socially moderate ones who didn't hate gay people, people of color, that sort of thing. But then you still had those on the right, in Congress, like Lindsey Graham in the U.S. Senate, and media people like Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin and assholes like that. There are still neocons in the way that we hated the neocons during the Bush-Cheney era, and they're still a cancer in the Republican Party. So wanted to go make that point also clear as well. So that was bad enough. But then there was the railroad worker strike, where they were trying to strike for sick leave and of that nature. And in defense of Bernie Sanders in the U.S. Senate, he came up with a bill that would go and grant 7 sick leave days for all rail workers. That bill was sent to the U.S. House. AOC voted against that bill. And it was from there that I was like, oh, she can fuck off. So she's been one disappointment after the other, is my point. It is my point that she's been a disappointment, one disappointment after the other. And because of that, I'm just like, I went from, when she rejected forced vote, I went from being like, rah, 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 AOC, to critical supporter. But you could just be critically supportive of people long enough until they just let you down over and over and over and over and non-stop. It took me a while with Bernie. It took a significantly longer amount of time with Bernie. But same thing with Bernie. And now Bernie and AOC are on this anti-oligarchy tour, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. But before I do, to put a little bit of levity into this conversation, let's go with this video from our beloved Turncoat Dawn. Here we go.
Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. And I say happy because joy, too, can be an act of resistance. I want to talk about personal acts of reclamation, because sometimes people will say, there's nothing I can do, I can't do, I feel so powerless. And
people sometimes like to make a lot of drama over the term Latinx. But even before Latinx, people were trying to do this, like, use an app to have the
I need to redo my
together.
nails. And I
gender is fluid, language is fluid.
We're here to talk about today. We are here to talk about sunscreen, specifically U.S. sunscreen, and how to fix it. U.S. sunscreen regulations are not necessarily making us more safe or better products. U.S. sunscreens are far behind Democratic the world
that rail against the term Latinx.
So
and they're like, this
clear
is
how far advanced the rest of the world is on sunscreen, and we deserve better here in the U.S. How does the FDA regulate?
Like,
FDA is different from the rest of the world.
I couldn't really even paint my nails red until I pretty much graduated and left the house.
Far more stringent standards, far more testing, far more scientific and clinical trials that are required, which is good. We want to make sure that things are safe.
If putting
However,
S
sometimes
on your
that can add
campaign
a lot
literature
of
is what you think is the why are people
You know, if politics doesn't work out, I can always start one of these channels.
kind of mentally put in whatever vowel they identify with.
And I think, like, as a
Vote.
they
have jurisdiction
over the
Early voting
Latinx
starts October 29th in New York State. California early ballots just got sent out last week.
That being said,
what they do.
All enjoy the filters that develop out of this joy.
trying to figure out
Looks and charms can go but so far, you know, and you know that's the thing right there with AOC. I mean, the cameras are always on her from day one because again, I don't want to objectify women, but that's why the cameras are always on her. She's very pretty and she's very charming. Okay, but policy matters, and that's what it comes down to. She became kind of a celebrity. You know, she became this social media sensation, and so she's always on social media. And she says the things she says on Twitter and the things she says on, you know, in the rest of social media. I totally agree with. I mean, there's nothing really wrong with her ideology. The only thing ideologically I deeply disagree with her on is the issue of free speech versus censorship. Again, I will say it like I said a million times before. I'm a free speech absolutist. I die on that hill. But she openly supports censorship. Even when I was cheering her on, I had that problem with her. But she just went from bad to worse all the way. And to the point where some people nickname her Nancy Pelosi. Excuse me, name her the new Aunt Nancy Pelosi. And I think that AOC stands for Axelrod Obama Pelosi myself. Axelrod Obama Pelosi. That's AOC in a nutshell these days. So I don't take her seriously. I mean, she comes across as skinny, as silly. I'm sorry, she is skinny. She comes across as silly, and so you know it's hard to take her seriously. She doesn't have the wherewithal to be running for president, and there are people out there talking about having her run for president in the year 2028, and I just don't get it. But before I go into her presidential run, I'm sorry, I made a mistake there. Sorry about that. Before I go into her presidential run, ran across this article here, and I will share with y'all. Hold on one second. Let me get it ready. And here we go. And it's from the Washington Post. And it's from the Washington Post. Sanders, AOC fighting oligarchy tour draws crowds, brings hope to anti-Trumpers. And I have something to say about that. So, liberal tag team urges the political left to rise against Trump and the ruling billionaire class. Where do I stand on that? Of course, that's one of those things. I just don't like the way that the resistance do most of these things. But yeah, you have to do the resistance in a smart way. And unfortunately, a lot of the resistance do things in a what I perceive as a dumb way. But anyway, let's go with the article. Folsom, California. This is from Seth McLaughlin, and from April 16, 2025. The line to get into Bernard Sanders and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez fighting oligarchy tour stretched for nearly a mile before the gates opened. and that's what's been happening. This anti-oligarchy tour that they've been on, it's been drawing in large crowds. An estimated 30,000 people flooded the streets. Many trekked to the back of the line with lawn chairs slung over their shoulders, baseball caps that read Gulf of Mexico and Resist, and t-shirts that said "Talk Bernie to me." Actually, that is funny. Democracy has no kings, and when injustice becomes law, resistance becomes duty. Similar scenes have been playing out across the country, underscoring Mr. Sanders and Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, the gristle 83-year-old avowed socialist from Vermont and the fresh-faced 35-year-old liberal firebrand from New York City are stepping into the void of the Democratic Party leadership. And the Democratic Party leadership has a big void right now, licking their wounds from the election. Anyway, let's go on. As seen as in this Sacramento suburbs at the top of the tour, they're giving voters a reeling from President Trump's return to the White House, a much desired dose of hope that things can change if the working class joins together and resists Mr. Trump, Elon Musk, and the ruling billionaire class. We are here this evening to say very loudly and clearly to Mr. Trump and people all over this country, we as Americans will not accept oligarchy. Now, I got something to say about that. Do I agree with that comment that we should not accept oligarchy? Absolutely. Is Trump part of the system of what we define as oligarchy? Absolutely. But here's a dirty little secret. So who are the Democrats that Bernie Sanders is, covering for? That's the issue I have with this anti-oligarchy tour. But I'll continue on that in a moment. Mr. Sanders said, we will not accept authoritarianism and we will not accept rigged economy where working people struggle while billionaires become richer. Bernie, those billionaires are becoming richer under Biden too. They are wealthy, no matter who's the president, no matter which party rules the White House. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez said her vision for a new world includes higher wages, stable housing, guaranteed health care, and a renewable energy economy. She framed the national debate as a choice, oligarchy or democracy. Okay, I agree with that. You see, that's the problem with Bernie Sanders and AOC is that when they go and they talk policy, they're a little vague here, but still what they're saying, there was a time the Democrats wouldn't dare say the vague comments that they just made here. And there's been a slight improvement in that regard. It's just that the Democratic Party didn't take it to where it needed to go. We are here today. We choose democracy. We choose freedom, and that means we must choose to organize the oligarchy, she said. We must do everything. We must do away with the power of big money. Agreed. But when you're saying what you're saying, and then what you end up doing, you end up funneling young radical energy, maybe older radical energy, just vibrant radical energy into a political party that says, okay, we're here to fight against the Republicans, but you're going to have to keep quiet with your left-wing views. You're not solving the problem of that situation. It might be one thing if they go into the Democratic Party and the Democratic Party said, we will listen to you and actually work to get some, to negotiate certain things. They're not doing that. They're not doing that at all. They're still hung up on Bill Clinton's formula of trying to be all things to all people, and to this whole, what I call Reaganization of the Democratic Party that took place since the late 80s that's still on here in the present. So that's my problem. So Ms. Ocasio has also been urging voters to recognize that Mr. Trump strokes deep division along race, identity, and culture and keep us all fighting and distracted from growing economic inequality, the shady moves he's making, including manipulating the stock market through his stop and go tariff agenda to enrich his wealthy friends at the expense of us all. Okay? Again, will not dispute these things. What I'm talking about is a matter of fact. Donald Trump is a criminal. He's found guilty of 34 counts of fraud, libel, sexual abuse. Of course, he is lying about manipulating the stock market to stock market too, she says. And if Donald Trump wants to find the rapists and criminals in this country, he needs to look into the mirror today. The energy around the Fighting Oligarchy tour harks back to Mr. Sanders' back-to-back bids for the Democratic Party presidential nomination. Still, given how angry and scared these voters are about Mr. Trump, the rallies have had greater sense of urgency. Plus, they served as a significant showcase for Ms. Cortez, whom some urged to launch a primary challenge against Minority Leader Charles E. Schumer and a test drive for a populist economic message that targets the MAGA movement, including Musk-led Department of Government Efficiency, mass firing of federal workers. Now, I'm going to sound like Cenk Uygur, and I apologize for this in advance, because I did peek at what they were saying about, I don't know, it was a day or two ago, about AOC and a possible run for president. I'm referencing them. I'm not going to play a video by them because I don't want to promote the Young Turks, but I will reference them. They were having a conversation about that. And as much as I hate to agree with Cenk Uygur, he's right that if she have to choose between running for president or doing a primary run against Chuck Schumer, maybe the primary run might be better. And I will tell you why, from my perspective, that would be better. I don't support AOC anymore, and I never, ever had a positive view of Chuck Schumer. But I will say this about Chuck Schumer. Because of AOC in the U.S. House of Representatives, the one thing she has achieved for the better is making Chuck Schumer a slightly less shitty senator. He's still shitty, but he's scared of her. He's scared that she may do a primary challenge. Now, I think that there was a primary challenge in the U.S. Senate for Chuck Schumer's seat. Chuck Schumer will probably still win that primary battle, but he'll come out politically bloody from it. And the Republican challenger might find it easier to defeat Chuck Schumer. Although I think that Chuck Schumer probably would still win and get reelected. But that's neither here nor there. I'll continue here. This week, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez reported raising $9.6 million in the first quarter of the year, the most has ever been raised in a single quarter. The crowd had roughly 30,000 people who showed up in Folsom's city, a population of 85,000, was similar to the turnout at other stops of the tour. It is also reminiscent of the massive crowds that Mr. Trump attracts for his rallies. And I'll just leave it at that. But what I will say is this, that we've seen this before, and this is an attempt to funnel energy back into the Democratic Party. I used to not think that about Bernie, but I think that now. And when I didn't think that about Bernie, I think that back then he wasn't trying to do that per se, but I think he is trying to now. And so is AOC. And that's what it comes down to. And that's pretty damn lazy, because voting harder to get more Democrats in there is not going to translate into better progressive legislation. It will not. In fact, what it will probably end up doing is it will embolden the Republicans in the next election cycle, when and for some reason they have a way of convincing normies out there of how, depending on how you want to look at it, how far left the Democrats are. I know the Democrats are not far left. Y'all know that the Democrats are not far left. But for some reason, the average Joe and Jane, whether they are Democrats themselves or they're Republican, thinks that the Democratic Party is too far left. And it just makes me ill when they do this. You know, it makes me ill. But anyway, thing about AOC is, you know, she wants to fight Trump. And Trump is a at this point he's a lame duck. He is obviously a lame duck. So, but if I were her, I would not try to go and worry about Trump. And if somehow, let me put it this way, the Democratic Party, if she runs for president, will not allow her to be the nominee, because to allow her to be the nominee, they're going to perceive her as too far left. I actually think that the Democratic Party is more likely to have Liz Cheney on the head of the ticket than AOC. If they fucked over Bernie twice, who has more wisdom and common sense than she does, what makes her think that she's going to be the nominee? What makes her think that, you know? But I want to play something here, or a nice little memory of one of our friends that ended up challenging her back in a few years ago, early 23, and you remember Blue Moon Red Wine. So
años que no hacen una ley de amnistía.
¿Una qué?
Una ley de amnistía. Una ley de migración hace 40 años. No, necesito hablar, necesito escucharme. Yo vine para hacer una pregunta. Señora, yo vine para hacer.
hold on a second.
Hace 40
Let me do that from the beginning.
años que no hacen una ley de amnistía.
¿Una qué?
Una ley de amnistía. Una ley de migración hace 40 años. No, necesito hablar, necesito escucharme. Yo vine para hacer una pregunta. Señora, yo vine para hacer una pregunta. Hace 40 años que no hay una ley de amnistía en este país. ¿Ok? Todavía no hay una ley de amnistía en este país. Y el Partido Demócrata mandó $100 billones a nazis en Ucrania, que esta señora votó para eso.
Okay. For some reason, TikTok is not doing what it's supposed to do. But you get the idea. You get the idea that our friend Blue Moon Red Wine challenged AOC. AOC didn't see it coming, and it was over the Ukraine funding, where she was absolutely correct to, absolutely 100% correct to call her out on that. And so I just remember that very fondly. Thought I'd share that, share that video and all that. So anyway, something else I was going to, anything else here? Anyway, my point is that it's just hard to take her seriously. I will share a video that I saw earlier today. I was debating whether to play that or not, but I'll play it, and I will comment on it. He still has the Eminem look, but he's gone back to wearing a tie. We're talking about Kyle Kalinske. And, to listen to Kyle today and his relationship past and present with AOC gave me reason to go and share this video, because I'll comment on it. So.
Y'all, it's happening. I keep telling you it's happening, but the evidence keeps pouring in that it indeed is happening. Now, one of the things I've been saying is there has been a mass liberal awakening in this country, where you used to have the left-wingers, the Bernie bros, And they were at odds with the liberals, the resistance liberals, who were more Hillary Clinton pilled, right? And there was like a civil war inside the Democratic Party where it's like, who's going to win out here? Well, now, over time, what we've witnessed is, because of Trump getting in office again, because of the resistance liberal politicians failing to do even basic resistance against Trump, enabling Trump, people like Chuck Schumer, for example, Alyssa Slotkin, Hakeem Jeffries, those same resistance liberals who in the past hated Bernie bros, hated Bernie, thought he was maybe sexist, right? Thought he was maybe racist. Those people are looking around and they're going, well, hold on now. The only people I see actually fighting back against Trump and actually offering something different, it's Bernie, it's AOC. It's the
They're giving him leeway, Bernie and AOC leeway to rally the troops, Kyle. You should know this, that there's a likelihood that the Democrats will retake at least one of the chambers, maybe both chambers of Congress. They may come back with a midterm. Don't know how high the number will be, but I would probably bet that somehow the Democrats will get back in power to challenge Trump. But what if in 2028 the Democrats win the White House too? You think they're going to be grateful to those Bernie bros, to the AOC followers, all these folks that are, that they're on the left side of the Democratic Party? You think that the Democratic Party would go bend over backwards to thank them? They won't. And the fact that Bernie and AOC are in the picture still doesn't make them anything new. Whenever the Democrats get back in power, no matter how loathsome the Democrats are, the left wing swallow their pride and they go and vote for these Democrats, and then they run to the nearest toilet afterwards. And that's what we're going to see. But you seem to think that the Democratic Party is going to transform itself. I see no evidence of that.
Left flank of the party that I used to be angry about all the time and act like they weren't loyal Democrat soldiers enough. Now they're looking going, they look like the most loyal Democratic soldiers. And it's the centrists, it's the corporatists, it's the Chuck Schumers of the world who are failing everybody by not knowing how to fight and not standing for anything, right? So the liberals are waking up and they're becoming leftists. Okay.
No, the liberals are not becoming leftists. They're using the leftists to try to get back in. And once they're back in, then they're going to go back to their old ways. I've seen it before. Kyle. You've been in politics long enough that you've also seen it before. They're going to do this again. Whatever happened to the independent Kyle? I know Kyle always kind of had a Democratic Party bias in his commentaries, but there was an independent streak he had. That independent streak is gone.
Now, we've already covered a poll where Kamala was number one in the poll, I believe, but then right behind Kamala in a solid number two position, and by a kind of a wide margin too, it was AOC. So AOC went from Nowheresville to second place in the 2028 Democratic primary polls. That's crazy. Now, by the way, for a brief moment, you had Cory Booker surged. Why? He did the 25-hour speech on the floor of the Senate, and it was a gesture where people thought, oh, thankfully somebody's fighting. This is great. But
Kyle, I'm not impressed with anything being done by the theatrics of Cory Booker. You yourself called out Cory Booker years ago. I remember. You're the reason I hate Cory Booker because and that's a good thing from your part, because you told everyone on how Cory Booker teamed up with the Republicans in the Senate to go and put a stop to a Bernie Sanders bill that will allow the U.S. government to negotiate for lower drug prices and allow people to go to Canada legally to get drugs to bring it back here in the United States. And Cory Booker went with the Republicans. Did not go with the Bernie Sanders people, which there are very few of in the Senate. He went with the Republicans. So Cory Booker, who's one of the people running probably in the year 2028, I have no open mind about him. Cory Booker can fuck himself. So and I'll say it again and again and again till the cows come home.
But he immediately undid all that hard work because he voted for like a bunch of Trump's cabinet picks after that. He voted for Charles Kushner, who's the dad of Jared Kushner, who's a corrupt goon. He was the only Democrat to vote for it. So,
well, you see, Kyle, that's what they do. You just said it himself, all the shit that Cory Booker has done. So, what's the use to do this? You need to operate on the streets. You need to operate with third parties. This is where you need to operate. I would say that the end game of the left in America, if you want to go into electoral politics, is to form some kind of a labor party, some kind of a socialist party, some kind of a progressive party, some kind of party on the left that would be to the left of the Democrats, and hopefully supplant the Democrats in the same way that Clement Attlee's Labor Party in 1945 supplanted the Liberal Party. And between 1945 and 1951, that Labor government basically almost had the economy almost half nationalized throughout the country. The entire economic system, about half of the economy got nationalized under that Clement Attlee's government, and we can't even do a public option here. This is sad. But anyway.
He blew it too, just like Gavin Newsom blew it by snuggling up to the right. A lot of these people in this era have blown it massively, right? Well, now we have a new poll. AOC seen as face of the Democratic Party, and it's not even close. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is seen as the face of the Democratic Party, according to new polling. In a coefficient survey conducted from May 7th to May 9th among 1,462 likely voters, 26% identified AOC as the face of the Democratic Party. Another 26% said there is no one currently leading the party, while 22% chose other. Ocasio-Cortez was far ahead of other listed Democrats. Coming in a distant second was close ally Senator Bernie Sanders. The pair recently went to various states with their Fighting Oligarchy tour. Representative Jasmine Crockett placed third in the survey with 8%. So I believe it was AOC 26%, Bernie 11%, which you could basically put those two together because they represent the same thing. So 37% for the left-wing vision. And then Jasmine Crockett, who she might not be as left-wing when it comes to policy as AOC and Bernie, but the way she fights, that codes as she's super left-wing. I have issues. She's taken some crypto money, questions on that, question on her position vis-a-vis Israel. So I'm not perfectly in alignment with Jasmine Crockett. But when she fights the right, that sort of fight, I'm not backing down. I'm going to come.
Okay, Jasmine Crockett. She's a normie Democrat. She may not be Hakeem Jeffries or Debbie Wasserman Schultz or somebody horrendous like that. But she's a down the line centrist Democrat to the right of AOC, to the right of Bernie. The only good thing I can say about Jasmine Crockett, and this is a low bar, but she referred to Marjorie Taylor Greene as a bleach blonde, bad built butch body. And it bothers Marjorie Taylor Greene. So on that one, I give Jasmine Crockett credit. But on everything else, Kyle, I mean, she's nothing to be excited about. I mean, I don't take her seriously. But I want you to contrast that Kyle with this Kyle over here back in 2021. And it's over the situation. I'll fast forward it here. Oh no, that's the sorry. Something else. I got another video there by mistake. Give me a moment. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. All right. This is from 2021.
All right, guys. So
2022, I believe. I think it was 2022. Hold on. Let me see what. It was before he dyed his hair. Yeah, June of 2022. And he went on to talk about, I'm going to scroll it forward. I think this is about, if I remember, I just thought about this. I think this is the area where he starts to talk about this. So anyway.
Is preposterous. 97% tiny sliver, a subculture. That's the thing that drives me crazy. Is like, and there are people out there who would say it's like bigoted for me not to concede completely to her argument. And I'm like, I'm old and I'm out of touch and, I'm not up with the times. No, quite literally, the numbers show she's not in touch with the times. So, and understand something, guys, this isn't a blanket generalization because it's true. Language does evolve over time, but some of the ways in which people try to change language don't land and they're not going to land. And it's like trying to force a square peg into a round hole, and it's really insular and it turns people the fuck off. Like I get it. Back in the day, the terminology used to be, illegal alien. Everybody said that. And then after a while, it became illegal immigrant. And it's like, okay, that's better. Alien, it like literally is trying to make somebody who's a fellow human being sound like foreign and scary, right? And so different. So I understand how that was clearly like a propaganda term that was sort of nefarious, right? But then it changed to illegal immigrant. Now that sounded fine to me, right? Like, yeah, they're not an alien, they're a person. They're an immigrant, right? So illegal immigrant. I thought that's a reasonable change. But then it changed to undocumented immigrant. And it was like, well, hold on. And the argument was, well, no human being can be illegal. So therefore we have to change illegal immigrant to undocumented immigrant. And it's like, okay, I'll go along with you, but I know that the word is going to be changed in 3.5 minutes again, and then you're going to change it again after that, and then you're going to change it again after that. And at the end of the day, it's like, why are we doing all this? Why are we doing all this? You want to make reasonable changes? Sure. But you like just changes for change's sake because somebody made up a dumb argument that they insist everybody should believe, and then we all have to change after that. It's like, we're wasting our fucking time here, guys. We're wasting our time here. And that like liberal oversensitivity and ability to get offended at fucking anything is something that turns off working class voters. There is no doubt about it. If you've ever been to a fucking union hall, you know that. So it's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. If somebody wants me to refer to them as that, I'll do it in a heartbeat because I'm not an asshole. I'm not trying to make a big issue out of absolutely nothing. It wouldn't be a big deal to me if somebody said I'm Latinx, so call me Latinx. Fine, no problem. But is that going to be my default shit? We're talking about Hispanic people? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I'm with 97% of Hispanics. And so I would argue that makes me more in touch than out of touch. And she's the one who's out of touch. Again, I'll read Michael's tweet one more time here. It's just a waste of, why are we talking about this? It's such a fucking waste of time. This is an example of why AOC will never be a viable presidential candidate in a general election. Look, that makes me, I'm not happy to say that. She's better on the economic policies than, 96% of elected Democrats. So I wish she would. I wish she would be a viable presidential candidate, but she's shooting herself in the foot with stuff like this. Because this is out of touch with the vast majority of working class Latino voters and all working class voters. This elite academia subset that just gets obsessed with language and language policing. It's not a concern for everyday working people of all backgrounds, all ethnic.
Basically, what this is about, and you heard it when he said there that she would never be a viable candidate for president. And she carries herself in a way where she wouldn't be a viable candidate for president. See, that was the better Kyle Kalinske. That was the Kyle Kalinske I used to watch just about religiously. But unlike the new Kyle Kalinske, who's basically trying to take the very good ideas he has and cater it to people who watch Pod Save America or something like that. And that's not going to work, Kyle. That's my criticism of you. You need to go back to the way you used to be. I missed the 2018, 2019 Kyle. We want that Kyle back. But anyway, but he was correct right there when he said about AOC. She would never be a viable candidate for president because people are not going to take her seriously. And here's the thing about AOC. Again, and this is going to sound like just a mean attack on her, but she's not mature. She acts like a little child a lot, and she gets her feelings hurt too quickly. You're going to go into something like, yeah, you can win that seat in the 14th congressional district over and over, no problem, and somebody hurts her feelings in that district, she's guaranteed that seat. She goes into, and that's another thing, going into a Democratic primaries. We saw what happened in 2016. We saw what happened in 2020. We even saw what happened in 2024. The Democratic Party was so fucking rigged that it turned one Democratic candidate into a Republican and got pushed into a Republican administration. I'm talking about Robert F. Kennedy, the nutcase. Robert F. Kennedy. The Democratic Party will not allow AOC anywhere near the nomination. They tolerate her in the 14th congressional district, and that's probably why she didn't do the force to vote thing. That's probably why she did not stand up against the leadership, against Nancy Pelosi the way she needs to, is that, Democrats do things like gerrymander districts to make things tough on people who do not play ball. Look what happened to Dennis Kucinich in 2010, 2012. That they changed the districts around, and he got primaried out of the district, and he now knows the Democratic Party's corrupt. He's an independent, by the way. He ran in the 7th congressional district in Ohio this past election, and I wish he would have won. See, Dennis Kucinich is probably a more real thing at this point than Bernie Sanders and AOC, because he paid the price. He was willing to pay the price, and he's all the more reasons why you need to go outside the two-party system. I understand the argument of taking an existing structure like the Democratic Party and to try to fight from within and to try to change things for the better. But the Democratic Party is institutionally very conservative, in spite of some of the nice little virtue signals. And the only reason why there is a left-wing presence in the Democratic Party is that we're locked in a two-party system. And like Chris had just said, if the Democratic Party was in another country, it will largely be a center-right party. But you say that to some people, the Democratic Party is not a left-wing party or a far left-wing party or even a center-left party or vaguely left party. You got some people going like beating their chest. It's not true. And the Democrats are a bunch of Marxists. I mean, they're too far gone. I mean, I had people in the last 4 years of the Biden presidency telling me how much that Joe Biden is being manipulated and controlled by Bernie Sanders and AOC and even the snake lady herself, Elizabeth Warren. It's not true, but that's what's been told, and some people still believe it to this day. Some people still believe it to this day. The Democratic Party is what it is. It is a centrist party that stands for nothing most of the time. And when they decide to stand for something, they punch left. That's what it comes down to. AOC will not have a ghost chance in hell of trying to get the nomination. She will not have a chance in hell of getting that nomination. It's a waste of time. The anti-oligarchy tour is not a waste of time, but the idea and the prospects of running for president, that's a waste of time. We've been through this before over and over and over again. And no, I'm not one of those folks that are trying to sound more left-wing than thou as a pretense to weaken the Democrats. It's just that the Democratic Party, in my 56 years of living, I've been fooled several times that the Democratic Party was going to make a comeback. When I gave up on the Democratic Party in the 90s, I got excited when I heard the prospects of Paul Wellstone running, and then he decided not to run. And during the Bush-Cheney years, when the Democrats, after the second defeat for the Democrats for president, they looked like they were having a little bit of courage to stand up against Bush and Cheney. And then I saw them revert back to the Clintonian way of doing things once Obama got elected. Then I got excited again about Bernie Sanders in 2016, 2020. And you can play this game but so long. And the people who's been right about how to advance the agenda of the left all along will come from the outside of the two-party system. Good luck to those, including AOC, trying to fight a good fight inside the Democratic Party. It's just not going to happen. I hope I'm wrong. I really do hope I'm wrong. And if we turn out to be wrong, we'll be first admitted, and then we wouldn't mind participating if there are actual victories inside the Democratic Party to pull it left and to actually initiate policies that we need in this country. It's just not going to happen. I'm running out of time, but I will talk to you all quickly before I go. So I saw a couple of people coming in. Let's see, who do we see here? We saw Warren, we saw Miguel. Of course, we saw Snipe Hunter. We saw D from around the world with D and Friends. We saw Max Sarjay. We saw Chuck Intergalactic UFO Show. So let's see. We saw Commissary Kate. How are you doing? And so, do we have anybody else here? We have Daniel Berry Sports Highlights. How are you doing today? Hey everyone, happy Memorial Day. It is that. I hope everybody's doing well on this Memorial Day. Doing well any day, Anybody else showed up here? Let's see. We have Sasa Ribeiro, Fogo Teta Agua. Let's see. We have okay, so we have everybody here. So Commissary Kate said, Willy, when Obama resigned the NDAA on December 30th 2011, I knew we were fucked. Yes, absolutely, we were. I remember that when that happened. So everyone, I'm going to say I'm going to go to work in a few minutes here, so I will conclude by saying if you like what you heard, please hit the like button. Helps with the algorithms. Comment. We'll have a conversation. Feel free to share any content I have on this channel, and as a First Amendment absolutist, it's my duty to inform you to create your own platform and utilize it, because we're the muckrakers of our time. Reject corporate media. Please, it won't cost you a cent. Just go ahead and subscribe to this channel if you haven't subscribed yet. And remember to always, let's fight to free Palestine, free healthcare for all, free speech. Obviously, free Edward Snowden, have him pardoned as well. And at the end of the day, remember, fuck Dan Bongino. So, y'all take care. I will talk to y'all soon. I have to head on. Bye-bye.